I love my husband, but our sex life has completely disappeared. He says he's attracted to me, but his actions tell a different story. I don't know what's real anymore, and I'm terrified of what this means for our marriage. When I met Jeff, I didn't expect that our relationship would turn into something this complicated. From the start, he was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. Grounded, thoughtful, funny in a quiet way, the kind of man who listens more than he talks. After a few weeks, I already felt this rare sense of safety around him, like I could finally relax. We met at a friend's housewarming party. I wasn't even planning to go, but a mutual friend convinced me. Jeff was standing in the kitchen talking about some ridiculous travel story, something about getting lost in a small mountain town and accidentally ending up at a stranger's wedding. I remember laughing so hard that night, and when he asked for my number before I left, I felt that small thrill you only get when something just clicks. From the very beginning, he mentioned his best friend, Jenna. I thought nothing of it at first. Everyone has a close friend from before a relationship. He spoke about her casually, like someone who had been part of his life for years. They'd started a small design and marketing business together, apparently right after college, and it was clear they'd built something pretty successful. Sometimes he'd share stories about late-night brainstorming sessions or funny client disasters they'd survived together. His face would light up in that way people's faces do when they talk about something they love. I assumed it was just pride. In the business, in the work, maybe even in the friendship. It didn't occur to me to be jealous. I'm not naturally that kind of person. And besides, everything with Jeff felt easy. He was affectionate without being overbearing, consistent without being dull. We saw each other almost every day, and 2 months in, he'd already introduced me to his friends and family. His mom adored me. His friends joked that he'd finally grown up. But there was one person I never met, Jenna. The first few times her name came up, I didn't even notice the pattern. She was always busy when I was around. There were a few times I thought I might finally meet her, like the time Jeff invited me to come by their office after work. But when I got there, she had just left. Another time, he said we could grab dinner with some of his coworkers, but at the last minute, Jenna canceled. At first, it seemed like coincidence. But after a few months, it started to feel deliberate. I remember one night we were sitting on his couch, and I absent-mindedly scrolled through Facebook while he was in the shower. You know how you end up going down that little rabbit hole of old photos when you're curious about someone's past? That's how I found them. Dozens of pictures of Jeff and Jenna, laughing, hugging, his arm around her shoulders, her kissing his cheek. The captions were full of inside jokes, heart emojis, and hashtags like nudge our relationship goals. My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything right away, but when he came back, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Finally, I just blurted out, "Hey, did you and Jenna ever date?" He froze for a second, then sighed. "Yeah," he said, "we did. For about 9 months. It was a long time ago, like a year and a half before I met you." He looked genuinely uncomfortable, but not guilty. Just tired, like he'd hoped it wouldn't come up. He said their relationship had been messy and that they realized they were better as friends. Apparently, they broke up and then started their business together soon after. He swore there was nothing romantic left between them. "She's like family to me now," he said. "Honestly, I can't imagine my life without her, but not in that way." I wanted to believe him, and maybe I did for a while. But as months went by, Jenna kept being this invisible presence. Always mentioned, never seen. I met everyone else in his life. His best friend from college, his sister, his business partners, even his childhood neighbor. But not her. Every time I got close to meeting her, something happened. She left early or canceled, or suddenly had a family thing. It started feeling less like coincidence and more like avoidance. And the more I thought about it, the more that small seed of doubt began to grow. About 3 months into dating Jeff, I started realizing just how strange the whole situation with Jenna really was. By then, I had heard so much about her that I felt like I practically knew her. Except I didn't. I knew what kind of coffee she liked, the inside jokes they shared about clients, how she hated meetings before 10 a.m., even that she and Jeff had the same ringtone because it made their schedules easier. He didn't talk about her constantly, but often enough that she hovered in the background of our relationship like a ghost neither of us could ignore. One night, we were sitting on his balcony with a bottle of wine, and I decided to ask a question I'd been holding back for weeks. "So," I said lightly, "when do I finally get to meet this famous Jenna?" He laughed. "You've been patient, huh? Soon, I promise. She's just weird about meeting people sometimes." "Weird how?" I pressed. He shrugged, swirling his glass. "I don't know. She gets anxious around new people, especially girlfriends. She's been through a lot. Her last breakup messed her up." It was a vague answer, but I let it go. Everyone has their quirks, and maybe she really was just socially anxious. Still, something about his tone felt rehearsed, like he'd used that explanation before. Weeks passed, and soon never came. Then came the open house. Jeff and Jenna's company was hosting an event to show off some of their projects, meet clients, and network. Jeff invited me, and I was honestly excited. Partly because I wanted to see what he'd built, and partly because I thought, finally, I'll meet her. The day of the event, Jeff came to my place after work. We had a few hours to kill, so we grabbed dinner and walked toward their office. But as we got close, he started acting off. He was quieter, checking his phone a lot, walking slower. A few blocks away, he suddenly said, "Hey, there's this coffee shop nearby that you'd love. Why don't you hang there for a bit while I get things set up? It'll be boring anyway." It sounded strange. "Why can't I just come with you?" I asked. He hesitated. "It's just, Jenna gets stressed during events. She's already on edge, and I don't want to overwhelm her before things start." That didn't sit right with me. I almost said, "You know what's overwhelming? Being hidden from your partner's business partner." But I didn't. I smiled and went along with it, mostly because I didn't want to start an argument right before his big night. He walked me to the cafe, bought me a latte, and said he'd text when it was a good time to come over. An hour later, I texted him, "Everything going okay? Need a hand?" He replied almost instantly, "Actually, something came up for Jenna. She can't be here tonight." I stared at my phone. What? So I went to the open house anyway, and sure enough, Jenna wasn't there. People kept asking about her, and Jeff repeated the same line over and over. She had a family emergency. Later, when we were walking back to my car, I asked what really happened. He sighed. "She had a panic attack. She was freaking out about meeting you and said she couldn't handle it. I told her to go home. I tried to be empathetic." "That's really sad," I said. "But Jeff, that's not normal." He nodded. "I know, I'm mad at her too. It's just, she's fragile. Fragile." That word stuck in my head for days. After that night, I started noticing more things that didn't add up. Like how he always silenced his phone when we were together. Not suspiciously, just consistently. Or how whenever he mentioned Jenna, there was this tiny flicker in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or discomfort. I couldn't quite tell. Then, one evening, I met him after work for dinner. He said he needed to stop by the office to grab something first. As we were walking there, he glanced at his phone, frowned, and said, "Oh, Jenna's still here. Let's just go for a walk instead." "Why?" I asked. "I can just wait inside." He smiled a little too quickly. "Nah, it's fine. She's working on a deadline and gets snappy when people distract her." So we walked around the block for half an hour before finally going in. By then, she was gone. It didn't feel like bad timing anymore. It felt like choreography. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe she really was just uncomfortable. But then, a week later, he went to a party without me, a birthday thing for a mutual friend. His phone died that night, and when he got home and plugged it in, he showed me something that made my skin crawl. He'd received 7 missed calls and a dozen texts from Jenna, all saying some version of, "Are you there yet? Is she with you? Are you sure she's not coming? I'm outside in my car. She never went inside, she just left." When I asked him what he thought about that, he looked genuinely exhausted. "I don't know what to do anymore," he said. "She's acting insane, but she's my business partner. I can't just cut her off." I didn't have an answer. I just remember lying awake that night, staring at the ceiling, realizing that I had fallen in love with a man whose ex was still orbiting him. And somehow, I was the one who wasn't allowed to exist. When Jeff told me he and Jenna were going on a 2-week camping trip, I laughed at first. I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He told me they'd planned the trip months before he met me, a team-building thing that had somehow evolved into a full-on vacation. They were supposed to go hiking through a national park, stay in cabins, unplug from work, and reconnect with nature. The words reconnect and 2 weeks hit me like a punch to the chest. I tried to be understanding, I really did. I told myself that adults could have platonic friendships, even with their exes. But deep down, it didn't feel platonic, at least not from her side. Not after all the dodging, the panic attacks, the hiding. And now they were going to be completely off-grid together. I remember sitting across from him at dinner, trying to sound calm. "So," I said, "you're really going through with this trip?" He nodded, almost cautiously. "Yeah, it's been planned for ages. Canceling now would be a logistical nightmare." "We already paid for everything," I forced a smile. "Right, a logistical nightmare." He reached across the table for my hand. "Babe, it's not like that. Jenna and we're friends. That's it. You have nothing to worry about." It was the right thing to say, but somehow it made me feel worse. Because if there really was nothing to worry about, why did he look so defensive saying it? The week before he left, things felt strained. He tried harder than usual, bringing me flowers, cooking dinner, checking in during the day. It almost felt like he was trying to pre-apologize for something. Every time I brought up the trip, he'd downplay it. "It's just camping," he'd say. "No phone signal, no Wi-Fi, no drama." And then one night, we were lying in bed and I finally asked the question that had been gnawing at me. "Would you ever go camping alone with a male friend for 2 weeks?" He hesitated. "No. Then why is it okay when it's Jenna?" He sighed. "Because it's different. We have a business together. It's complicated. It always was." The morning he left, I helped him pack. I smiled, hugged him, told him to have fun, and then cried in the shower after he drove away. For the first few days, I tried not to obsess. I hung out with my friends, caught up on work, even picked up a new hobby just to distract myself. But it was impossible not to think about it. Every time I checked social media, there she was and posting. Photos of campfires, lakes, and Jeff. Her captions were the worst part. "Some people just get you. Back where we belong." Nothing beats this kind of peace. Every post had him in it, sometimes smiling, sometimes candid, but always close to her. And not once did she mention that he had a girlfriend. By day 6, I was a mess. My stomach twisted every time I opened Instagram, but I couldn't stop myself. The pictures looked so intimate, like two people who shared a secret. I wanted to believe they were innocent, but the truth is, I didn't even know what innocent looked like for them anymore. When he finally called me from a gas station with reception, I tried to sound normal. "Hey," I said, "looks like you guys are having a great time." He chuckled. "Yeah, it's been awesome. Jenna's actually been super chill. I think the break from work was good for both of us." My throat tightened. "She's been posting a lot of pictures of you." He paused. "Oh, yeah, she loves taking pictures for the business account. They're on her personal Instagram," I said. "With hashtags like "car back where we belong." There was silence. Then a slow exhale. "Look, I'll talk to her." I didn't realize she was posting that kind of stuff, but he didn't sound angry, just tired. Almost like I was the one making things complicated. When he got back, I was ready to have a serious talk. I told myself I wouldn't get emotional, that I'd be calm and rational. But as soon as I saw him, all of that fell apart. He walked through the door tan, scruffy and smiling, and all I could think about was her. Her laughter echoing next to his in the woods, her sleeping just a few feet away, her posting photos of the man I loved like he still belonged to her. I confronted him that night. I showed him the posts. I told him how humiliated I felt, how weird and disrespectful the whole thing was. He rubbed his face and said, "You're right. I should have set better boundaries. I'll talk to her tomorrow." But tomorrow came, and nothing changed. Her post stayed up. He still went to the office every day with her. And I still hadn't met her. That was when something inside me snapped. I realized I was dating a man who said all the right things, but never actually did them. And maybe, deep down, he didn't want to. Because if Jenna really was just a friend, then why was he protecting her feelings more than mine? By the time a week had passed after Jeff got back from the trip, I was emotionally exhausted. Every conversation felt like I was walking a tightrope. One wrong word and we'd fall into another argument. I couldn't stop overanalyzing every detail, every pause, every time he mentioned Jenna. It felt like she was haunting our relationship, even though I'd never met her. One night after dinner, I decided I was done pretending everything was fine. He was washing the dishes when I said, "We need to talk." He froze. That's never a good sentence. I ignored the joke. I need you to understand something, Jeff. I've been patient. I've tried to be understanding. But this thing with Jenna is not normal. You've been dating me for 10 months, and I still haven't even met your best friend. That's not okay, he sighed, setting down a plate. I told you she has anxiety. Meeting new people. Stop, I cut him off. Don't you think it's weird that she's supposedly terrified to meet me, but somehow manages to post a dozen pictures of you looking like her boyfriend? He looked away. You're blowing this out of proportion. That made something inside me crack. Jeff, she fakes panic attacks to avoid seeing me. She stalks your social events just to make sure I'm not there. And you keep making excuses for her. Do you not see how humiliating this is? He stayed quiet, staring at the sink. The silence stretched long enough that I started to feel dizzy. Finally, he muttered, I'll talk to her. You've said that before. He turned to face me then, his voice sharp. What do you want me to do, Emily? Fire her? Destroy the business we built from the ground up? I swallowed hard. No, I just want you to have my back. I want to feel like your girlfriend, not a stranger competing with your ex. He exhaled through his nose, rubbing his temples. Okay, I'll set boundaries. You'll meet her soon. I promise. It was supposed to make me feel better. Instead, it sounded like every empty promise I'd ever heard. 2 weeks went by. Nothing changed. Jenna still wasn't feeling up to it. There was always some new reason. A migraine, a family issue, bad timing. And every time Jeff just nodded and accepted it. I started to feel like the crazy one for even bringing it up. But then something happened that shattered whatever patience I had left. Jeff left his laptop open one night while he was in the shower. I wasn't trying to snoop, I swear. I just walked by the couch and saw his screen still on, open to a text thread, with Jenna. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But the preview message stopped me cold. It said, I miss having you to myself. Everything's different now. My heart slammed against my ribs. I clicked the message. Scrolling through, it wasn't overtly romantic, but it was intimate. They talked about inside jokes, old trips, late-night thoughts. She sent him photos from the camping trip with captions like, "This was the best night, and wish we could go back." And he didn't shut it down. He replied with hearts, with, "Yeah, me too, and we had fun." Nothing explicitly incriminating, but enough to tell me where his emotional loyalty really was. When he came out of the bathroom, I was sitting there with his laptop closed and tears streaming down my face. He froze. What happened? I looked up at him. Do you still have feelings for her? His expression changed in slow motion. Confusion, then guilt, then anger. Did you go through my messages? I didn't answer. He sat down across from me, his jaw tight. That's not okay, Emily. Neither is lying, I snapped. Neither is spending every day defending a woman who clearly still wants you. He ran his hand through his hair. You don't get it. Jenna's not in a good place mentally. She gets attached to people and you're feeding it, I said, my voice shaking. You're letting her treat you like you're still hers. You can't be her therapist, her boyfriend, and my partner at the same time. You have to choose. He stared at me for a long time. I could tell he wasn't expecting that. Maybe he thought I'd just cry, forgive him, and move on. But I meant it. This isn't fair to me, I continued. You need to decide what you want. If you can't create real boundaries with her, I can't stay in this relationship. He looked down at his hands. So what, it's her or you? Yes, I said quietly. That's exactly what it is. He didn't answer right away. He just nodded slowly, then stood up and said, I need to think. He spent the night at his brother's. The next day, he came home looking pale and tired. He said he'd talked to Jenna, that she'd admitted she was still emotionally dependent on him and needed to take a step back. He told me they agreed to spend less time together outside of work and that he'd told her she needed therapy. For the first time in months, I actually believed him. He looked broken. He cried when he apologized, said he'd never meant to hurt me, that I was his future, and for a while, things really did get better. He was more present, more affectionate. He texted me during the day, made plans for us on weekends, even talked about moving in together next year. It felt like we were healing. But deep down, I couldn't shake one thought. The one that crept in every time his phone buzzed, every time he said he was working late. If Jenna was really gone from our lives, why did I still feel like she was watching? For about a month after that confrontation, things felt almost normal again. Jeff and I slipped back into an easy rhythm. Dinners at home, lazy Sundays, morning coffee runs. It was like the tension had dissolved. He was attentive, thoughtful, even a little clingy in a way he hadn't been before, and for a while, I let myself believe it. I wanted to believe it. He told me he and Jenna were keeping their relationship strictly professional. He said she'd started seeing a therapist and had even apologized to him for being inappropriate. I didn't ask to see proof. I was just so relieved to have him back, to have us back. But there was this one thing. He'd stopped mentioning her completely. Like, at all. No name, no casual stories, nothing. Which sounds like a good thing, right? Except it felt off, forced, like he was trying too hard not to say her name. And when you live with someone long enough, you start to notice tiny cracks in the act, like how he'd flinch every time his phone buzzed. Or how he'd take certain calls in the hallway, speaking in a voice too low for me to hear. Or how sometimes he'd come home from late client meetings, smelling faintly of her perfume, that same floral scent I'd noticed on the hoodie he'd worn during their trip. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I'd already pushed him so far with my suspicions that I'd ruin everything if I brought them up again. But paranoia has a way of whispering louder when you ignore it. One Saturday, I went by his office to surprise him with lunch. It was around noon and he'd said he'd be there all day. I grabbed sandwiches and drove over. When I got there, the lights were on, but the front door was locked. I peered through the glass and saw his jacket hanging on the chair. His car was in the lot. I called him, no answer. Waited 5 minutes. Then 10. Finally, I walked around the side of the building, where there was a back entrance they sometimes used for deliveries. The door was cracked open. I stepped inside and froze. There was laughter, his voice and hers. It was muffled but unmistakable. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I took a few steps closer, trying not to make a sound. They weren't doing anything, at least not physically. When I peeked around the corner, they were sitting on the floor, surrounded by paperwork, half-eaten takeout, and empty coffee cups. It looked innocent enough, except for the way they were sitting, too close. Her hand resting lightly on his arm, the kind of closeness that wasn't about business, and he was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months, soft, unguarded, like he'd forgotten I existed. I didn't confront them. I just turned around and walked out, hands shaking, lunch still in my bag. When I got home, I sat on the couch for 2 hours staring at the wall. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry yet. I just felt numb, like everything inside me had gone quiet. He came home that night acting like nothing had happened. He kissed me on the forehead, dropped his keys, and started talking about how productive his day had been. I just watched him, trying to decide if I was ready to hear the truth. "Did you see Jenna today?" I asked finally. He froze for half a second, barely noticeable, but enough. "Yeah, she stopped by for a bit. Why?" "Just wondering," I said. The lie was so smooth it almost impressed me. That night I barely slept. My brain replayed every weird thing that had ever happened. Every time he'd told me she wasn't around, every mysterious phone call, every late night at work. And it all lined up too perfectly. So the next morning, I did something I swore I wouldn't do again. I opened his phone. This time, I didn't have to search far. Their messages were back, hundreds of them. They texted almost every day. Sometimes quick updates about work. Sometimes long rambling conversations at 2 a.m. about how things used to be simpler. One thread caught my attention. "Jenna, I can't keep pretending this doesn't hurt." "Jeff, we agreed to take a step back." "Jenna, you say that, but then you show up with that smile and I forget everything." "Jeff, you know I can't do this right now." "Jenna, not right now? Or not ever?" That was 2 nights ago. When I confronted him the next morning, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just put his phone on the table and asked, "What are we doing, Jeff?" He didn't even try to deny it. He just sat down, ran a hand through his hair, and said, "I don't know. Do you love her?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not like that. I care about her. I can't explain it. You've been lying to me for months. I didn't want to hurt you. That was when I finally lost it. You didn't want to hurt me. but you've been emotionally cheating on me with your ex for half our relationship. Do you have any idea what that feels like? He looked at me like he genuinely didn't, like he'd convinced himself that what he was doing wasn't wrong, just complicated. Nothing physical happened, he said. That word, physical, made my stomach turn. Because emotional betrayal hurts in a way sex never could. It's quieter, slower, like a slow leak in a tire you don't notice until the car won't move anymore. I packed a bag that afternoon. He begged me to stay, to talk it out, to give him one more chance. He swore he'd end things with her, go no contact, whatever it took. But the thing was, I didn't even know what ending things meant anymore. They shared a business, a past, a bond I could never fully understand. How do you compete with that? I told him I needed space and went to stay with a friend. That was 2 days ago. He's texted me every few hours since. Half apologies, half panic. Part of me still loves him. But another part, the quieter, stronger part, is starting to realize that maybe love isn't enough when the other person never really left someone else behind. And maybe, deep down, I always knew that. It's been 3 weeks since I left. 3 weeks of waking up in my friend's guest room, scrolling through old texts, and wondering how everything that once felt so solid could fall apart so quietly. Jeff still messages me every day. At first, it was long paragraphs, desperate, apologetic, full of promises to change. Then shorter, quieter texts. I miss you. I still made your coffee this morning by accident. Can we just talk? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know what to say anymore. Every time I tried to write something, I'd delete it halfway through. There was no version of this conversation where either of us came out whole, but yesterday he showed up in person. He texted that he was outside. I almost didn't go down. My friend told me to ignore him, to move on, to not give him the chance to twist the story. But I had to see him one last time. Not for closure, not for forgiveness, just to know. He looked different when I opened the door. Not worse, just smaller somehow. Tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from sleepless nights, but from months of carrying something too heavy to set down. We sat on the porch steps in silence for a while. The fall air was sharp, and I could smell rain on his jacket. It was the first time in weeks I'd been close enough to notice that. He spoke first. I told her it's over. I didn't respond. The words meant nothing now. They were like a bandage on a wound that had already scarred. She's taking time off work, he continued. She said she wants to move. Maybe to another city. I stared at the street, watching the light flicker through the trees. That's probably for the best, he nodded. I just wanted to tell you that. You deserve to hear it from me. There was something painfully sincere in his voice. The kind of sincerity that only comes after too many lies. I wanted to believe him, but belief doesn't grow back once it's been burned down. Why didn't you just let me go earlier? I asked quietly. Before it got this bad? He looked at me for a long moment, eyes red, voice barely a whisper. Because I thought I could fix it before you found out how broken it really was. That hurt more than any confession could. Because it wasn't malice, it was fear. The kind that hides in people who can't stand being the bad guy, even when they already are. I asked him what he wanted now. He didn't say you. He didn't say us. He just said, I don't know how to start over. And that was when I realized, neither did I. We sat there for another hour, talking about everything except what mattered. About the house, the dog we'd almost adopted, the trip we'd planned and canceled 3 times. Normal things that didn't exist anymore. At some point, he reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Not angrily, just gently. Like I was saying goodbye without using words. When he finally stood to leave, he hesitated on the steps. If you ever change your mind, I won't, I said. It came out softer than I expected. But I'll still hope you figure yourself out. He nodded, gave a small, broken smile, and walked away. I watched him until he turned the corner and disappeared. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the small moments. The first time he told me he loved me, the mornings we'd cook breakfast in silence, the stupid inside jokes that only made sense to us. They all felt like ghosts now. Still there, but fading, and yet beneath all the pain, there was this strange, fragile peace. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for him to choose me. I wasn't fighting for something already gone. I was just standing still. This morning, I packed the rest of my things. I don't know where I'm going yet. Maybe a new city, maybe just a small apartment on the other side of town. Somewhere I can breathe again. Before I left, I scrolled through our old messages one last time. I didn't delete them. I just archived the thread, like closing a chapter I might never reopen. Part of me still loves him. I think part of me always will. But love isn't supposed to feel like holding your breath, so I'm learning to exhale. Maybe one day, when the ache dulls and the noise fades, I'll stop replaying what could have been. Maybe I'll even be grateful that I learned the difference between love and attachment, but not today. Today I'm just driving away, with the windows down, the road open, and a kind of quiet that finally feels like mine.